Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with some more esoterica. Today we are diving back into the works of Mr. Henry Agrippa. This is Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points brought to light by the text. It is not the format for everyone, but people do find value in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in the terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above, in the box down below, along with the original source material and the link from my book, where I teach you to do magic responsibly, so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. With that being said, we are going to dive in and continue our exploration of Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy with Book 1, Chapter 10, and probably at least one more chapter. I don't know how long these are. We'll try to keep it around an hour. Let's go. Chapter 10, of the occult virtues of things. There are also other virtues in things which are not from any element, as to expel poison, to drive away the noxious vapors of minerals, to attract iron, or anything else. And this virtue is a sequel of the species, and a form of this or that thing, whence also it being little in quantity, is of great efficacy, which is not granted to any elementary quality. For these virtues, having much form and little matter, can do very much, but an elementary virtue, because it hath more materiality, requires much matter for its acting. And they are called occult qualities because their causes lie hid, and man's intellect cannot in any way reach them and find them out. Then how do you know about them? Wherefore philosophers have attained to the greatest part of them by long experience, rather than by the search of reason. For, as in the stomach the meat is digested by heat, which we know, that is in part true, but it is more digested by the acids. So it is changed by a certain hidden virtue, which we know not. For truly it is not changed by heat, but because it should rather be changed by the fireside than in the stomach. So there are in things, besides the elementary qualities which we know, other certain inbred virtues created by nature, which we admire and are amazed at, being such as we know not, and indeed seldom or never have seen. As we read in Ovid of the phoenix, one only bird which renews herself. All birds from others do derive their birth, but yet one fowl there is in all the earth, called by the Assyrians phoenix, who the wane of age repairs and sows herself again. And in another place, Egyptus came to see this wondrous sight, and this rare bird is welcomed with delight. Long since Metreus brought a very great wonderment upon the Greeks and Romans concerning himself. He said that he nourished and bred a beast that did devour itself. Hence, many to this day are solicitous what this beast of Metreus should be. Who would not wonder that fishes should be digged out of the earth, of which Aristotle, Theophrastus, and Polybius, the historian, makes mention. And these things, let's look at that footnote if it's not too far down. Footnote 2 makes mention. He, Theophrastus, says also, that in the vicinity of Heraclea and Cromna, and about the river Lycus, as well as in many parts of the Euxine, there is one kind of fish that frequents the waters near the banks of the rivers and makes holes for itself in which it lives, even when the water retires and the bed of the river is dry. For which reason these fishes have to be dug out of the ground and only show by the movement of the body that they are still alive. That is true. We have mudfish which do something along that line. I'm not sure what the scientific name of them is, but they walk. Like they'll go from pond to pond even. Back to the text. And these things which Pausanias wrote concerning the singing stones. Let's look at that one. Singing stones. Near this hearth is a stone on which they say Apollo put his harp, and if you hit this stone with a pebble it twangs like a struck harp string. I was amazed by this, but still more amazed by the Colossus of Egypt. In Egyptian Thebes, where you cross the Nile to the reeds, as they call it, I saw a sounding statue of a seated figure. Most people call him Memnon. Cabbaces cut it in half. The upper half from the head to the middle has been thrown away, but the rest is still enthroned and cries out every day as the sun rises. The sound is very like the twang of a broken lyre string or a broken harp string. And these are not impossibilities either, if you were unaware. Stonehenge resonates. If you stand in the right place and you sing in the right key, all of the stones sing back. That is a thing. All of these effects are occult virtues. So the ostrich concocts cold. We're going to look at that because their understanding of the ostrich, okay, it's just a reference. They do not understand ostriches, right? It was a mystery creature to them. They thought that they stuck their head in the ground to hide from danger, and that is definitely not a real thing. If you believe that, you watch too many Saturday morning cartoons. So, the ostrich concocts cold and most hard iron and to digest it into nourishment for his body. See, they don't understand. Whose stomach, they also report, cannot be hurt with red-hot iron. That is simply not going to be true. So that the little fish called Agneses doth so curb violence of the winds and appease the rage of the sea, that let the tempest never be so imperious and raging, the sails also bearing a full gale, it doth, notwithstanding, by its mere touch, stay the ships, and makes them stand still, that by no means they can be moved. So, salamanders and crickets live in the fire, though they seem sometimes to burn, yet they are not hurt. The like is, and again, this is simply not true. If you take a salamander and throw it into fire, it's going to die. If you take a cricket and you throw it into fire, it's going to die. And then now, there may be some species that I'm unaware of, but I highly doubt it, that is impervious to fire, but as far as I am aware, that is not a thing for any living creature. Now, as an allegory, fine. As an entity on the sixth plane of existence even, fine. But on the mortal plane, the third level existence of salamanders and crickets, absolutely not. Although they seem sometimes to burn, yet they are not hurt. Really? Did you ask them? The like is said of a kind of bitumen, with which the weapons of the Amazons were said to be smeared over, by which means they could be spoiled neither with sword nor fire. Okay, well, I'm going to tell you right now that if you coat anything in bitumen, it is going to catch in fire. Right, it will not be proof against fire at all. And let's see, the Amazons, a nation of warrior women in Africa who burned off their right breast to better draw the bow. That is a new variation on the story. The variation that I've always heard was that they cut it off, not that they burned it off. The name was said by the Greeks to mean deprived of a pap. There were no men in the nation. When a boy was born, he was either killed or sent to live with his father in a neighboring state. Herodotus gives a long and entertaining description of Amazons transplanted by the Greeks to Scythia. Homer mentions them twice in the Iliad, calling them men's equals, who fright men in battle. This is echoed by Virgil. Penthesilea, queen of the Amazons, raging in the fight, leads the band of Amazons armed with crescent shields, glowing with courage in the midst of thousands. Her breast is exposed. She is girt with a golden belt, a female warrior, a maiden who dares to engage in battle with men. Now, the legend of the story of the Amazons, that there's no reason to doubt that there was a matriarchal line of warriors. That is simply, it would be foolish to assume that that could never happen. But, however, we do not have any real records of these things. Like, I understand that people tell stories about all kinds of things. And if you, for instance, were used to seeing everyone keep their hair cut like mine, right? Relatively short, even with a beard. Right? Relatively short. If you saw someone else who was masculine without a beard, right? Several of the native tribes in the western half of the globe don't have facial hair. And if you saw them with long hair and a ponytail, and you saw them with no facial hair, and all you were used to seeing was people that looked like me, then it would be natural to assume that they were effeminate. And if they were warriors and they had what appeared to be one breast, right, it could be armor covering one side and not the other. Like, there's all kinds of things it could be. Now, it is entirely possible that there were these women, but there is no reason to believe that it happened in the way that it was described, especially the part where they killed all the men. Right? There is no sexual reproduction without men. That just simply is not a thing. Although science is trying really hard to make it not a thing for the two genders to be required. They just created a life out of sperm with no egg. That's a horrible travesty, but they've been equally trying to do the same in the opposite with no sperm, so that is equally a travesty. Life is about balance. You shouldn't be oppressing women. That is definitely a thing. You should not be oppressed by women. That is definitely a thing as well. With which also the gates of Caspia, made of brass, are reported to be smeared over by Alexander the Great. Now, this is still talking about bitumen. Bitumen is what makes coal, right? Compressed bitumen is coal. It is therefore quite fiery. It is also what they use in the asphalt for your roads. And again, it catches on fire. The gates of Caspia, called the Iron Gate, stood at an unofficial dividing line between Western and Eastern Asia in the principal pass from Media into Parthia and Hyrcania through the Caspian Mountains. This pass was so narrow, only a single wagon could traverse it. Walls of stone overhung on either side dripped salt water on the heads of those who filed through. At the narrowest point, the Persians built iron gates, which perhaps were bronze with iron bolts, and a guardhouse. The pass stood near the ancient city of Rog, present-day Tehran. There was another famous pass called Caspier Portier, but more correctly, Koskier Portier or Albane Portier, which stood on the western side of the Caspian Sea, south of Derbent, in the southernmost extremity of the Caucasian Wall, otherwise known as Alexander's Wall. It also had gates of iron and was fortified. There is no mention there of bitumen. Like, I know bitumen because I was a blacksmith and I did forge work, and therefore I had bituminous coal. That was one of the best things that you can do to forge, is bituminous coal. And so I am fully aware that bitumen burns. Alright. We read also that Noah's Ark was joined together with this bitumen, and that endured some thousands of years upon the mountains of Armenia. It is indeed the legend that Noah's Ark was covered with bitumen. I don't know that joined together would be the correct terminology, right? It was a water-proof that was put on the outside. If you go and pour water on your roads, you will notice it runs off, right? That is due to the bitumen. It's not because of the rocks and the sand aggregate in there. It is the bitumen that makes it water resistant. And so it is definitely a coat. They use bitumen on rooftops for, like, if you got a flat roof, they'll use that as a tar to cover the roof. And so, yes, it is definitely a thing that can happen. There are many such kind of wonderful things, scarce credible, which, notwithstanding, are known by experience. Amongst the antiquity, make mention of satyrs, which were animals in shape half men and half brutes, yet capable of speech and reason. Let's see what they've got on the satyrs. The satyri are the woodland spirits, half beast and half men of Greek mythology. They were represented as hairy and solid of frame, with flat noses, pointed ears, and small horns growing from their foreheads. And they were given the tail either of a goat or horse. They find no mention in Homer, but Hesiod calls them the race of worthless satyrs, unfit for work. Sensual by nature, they lusted after woodland nymphs and loved wine, dancing, and music. The Romans identified satyrs with their own indigenous mythological faunae, and under the Roman satyrs acquired larger horns and goat's feet. The references to satyrs in the King James Bible, Isaiah, are translations of the Hebrew hairy ones, and probably refer to a kind of Arabic demon. I would have to go back and look, but this was probably just talking about the people in the area, and the demon is an appellation placed upon it by others. That is most often the case. One whereof Saint Hierome reporteth spake once unto holy Antonius the hermit, and condemned the creature of the error of the Gentiles, in worshipping such poor creatures as they were, and desired him that he would pray unto the true God for him. Let's go ahead and pull that one up too. Alright, for him. This refers to the meeting of Saint Anthony with the satyr while on his journey to find Paul the hermit. The satyr told the saint that he had been sent by his fellow satyrs to entreat his prayers and learned from him something about the Savior of the world. The story is related by Saint Jerome in his Life of Paul, the first hermit of Egypt. Alright, and to finish out this chapter, the true God for him. Also he affirms that there was one of them showed openly alive and afterwards sent to Constantine the emperor. Now, on the topic of satyr, before we get into this last part, I'm going to make a point of something that I've made mention of before, and it is something that I found out tangentially. In the state of Louisiana, we have a very specific bestiality law. You are prohibited in excess from having sex with one particular animal. Now, it is absolutely against the law to have sex with the other animals, but this one in particular is an extra problem. If you get caught having sex with a sheep, you are in severe trouble. That's because you can impregnate a sheep. You may not know that. I didn't. It was surprising to me. It's not something that is in my realm of proclivities, but it was brought to my attention, and so I learned it, and now I know it, and so now you do as well. It is entirely possible that the legends of satyrs, even the reference of the one that was brought alive to the emperor, is a result of one of these copulations. There are reasons why it is illegal. Now, let's dive into the next chapter. Chapter 11. How occult virtues are infused into the several kinds of things with ideas, through the help of the soul of the world and rays of the stars, and what things abound most with this virtue. That sounds an awful lot like manifestation. Platonists say that all inferior bodies are exemplified by the superior ideas. Now, they define an idea to be a form above bodies, souls, and minds, and to be but one, simple, pure, immutable, indivisible, incorporeal, and eternal. And that the nature of all ideals is the same. Let's see about the footnote. Is the same. Does that absolute reality which we define in our discussions remain always constant and invariable, or not? Does absolute equality or beauty or any other independent entity which really exists ever admit to change of any kind? Or does each one of these uniform and independent entities remain always constant and invariable, never admitting any alteration in any respect or any sense? They must be constant and invariable, Socrates, says Cebes. Well, what about the concrete instances of beauty, such as men, horses, clothes, and so on, or of equality, or of any other members of a class corresponding to an absolute entity? Are they constant, or are they, on the contrary, scarcely ever in the same relation to any other, either with themselves or to one another? With them, Socrates, it is just the opposite. They are never free from variation. And that comes from Phaedo, which we have not read, and see also the Republic, which we definitely have. If you are interested, it is part of the Ancient Lore playlist, and Plato has his own playlist as well. The Republic is a damn fine read, and should be mandatory in school just like the Federalist Papers. Alright, where do we stop? Now, they place ideas in the first place in the very goodness itself. An example, God, by way of cause. Let's see the footnote. The way of cause. This reality, then, that gives their truth to the objects of knowledge and the power of knowing to the knower, you must say, is the idea of good, and you must conceive it as being the cause of knowledge and of truth, in so far as known. Yet, fair as they both are, knowledge and truth, in supposing it to be something fairer still than those you will think rightly of. But as for knowledge and truth, even as in our illustration, it is right to deem light and vision sun-like, but never to think that they are the sun. So here it is right to consider these two and their counterparts as being like the good or boniform, but to think that either of them is the good is not right. Still, higher honor belongs to the possession and habit of the good. Again, see the Republic. By way of cause, and that they are distinguished amongst themselves by some relative considerations only, lest whatsoever is in the world should be but one thing without any variety, and that they agree in essence, lest God should be a compound substance. In the second place, they place them in the very intelligible itself. An example, in the soul of the world. That references lead to nowhere, so differing the one from the other by absolute forms, so that all the ideas in God, indeed, are but one form. But in the soul of the world, they are many. They are placed in the minds of all other things, whether they be joined to the body or separated from the body, by a certain participation, and now by degrees are distinguished more and more. They place them in nature as certain small seed forms infused by the ideas, and lastly, they place them in matter as shadows. Hereunto may be added that in the souls of the world there may be as many seminal forms of things as ideas in the mind of God, by which forms she did in the heavens above the stars frame to herself shapes also, and stamped upon all these same properties. On these stars, therefore, shapes and properties, all virtues in various species, as also their properties do depend, so that every species hath its celestial shape or figure which is suitable to it, from which also proceeds a wonderful power of operating, which proper gift it receives from its own idea, through the seminal forms of the soul of the world. For ideas are not only essential causes of every species, but are also the causes of every virtue, which is in the species. And this is that which many philosophers say, that the properties, which are in the nature of things, which virtues, indeed, are the operation of ideas, are moved by certain virtues, viz., such as have a certain and sure foundation, not fortuitous nor casual, but efficacious, powerful, and sufficient, doing nothing in vain. Now these virtues do not err by their acting, but by accident, viz., by reason of the impurity or inequality of the matter. For upon this account there are found things of the same species, more or less powerful, according to the purity or indisposition of the matter. For all celestial influences may be hindered by the indisposition or insufficiency of the matter. Whence it was a proverb among the Platonists that celestial virtues were infused according to the desert of the matter, which also Virgil makes mention of when he sings. Their nature's fiery awe, and from above and from gross bodies freed, divinely move. Wherefore those things in which there is less of the idea of the matter, in example, such things which have a greater resemblance of things separated, have more powerful virtues in operation, being like the operation of a separated idea. We see then that the situation and figure of the celestials is the cause of all those excellent virtues that are in the inferior species. Now, I didn't have a whole lot to add to this. First off, because I don't believe in the idealism, right? I do believe that there is an eternity, and that is possibly separated from the current, not necessarily. I do not believe that there is some perfectly realized man in some other realm which we are reflections of. It is possible, but it doesn't bear out fruit. So there wasn't a whole lot to add on that. We've already discussed the fact that I'm more of a realist. I deal with the things that are actually here, even though I deal with some fantastical things, right? I believe magic is real. I don't believe it is a reiteration of this third realm through the second realm into our realm. I just don't believe that. It's possible. The intellect and the thoughts and the divine, I do believe that there is divine revelation. I don't believe that it is God screaming from the clouds, hey, you need to do this thing, right? It is a flash of intuition that puts all of the pieces together in exactly the right order and exactly the right timing. That's divinely inspired. Many of the things that I talk about on this channel are from that. It is divine flashes of revelation that have come through contemplation. I believe emphatically that it came from Creator Source because the fruit had borne out, right? The flash of inspiration that led to me manipulating the electromagnetic forces of creation, which is the Holy Spirit, to allow myself to heal, I believe came from the divine. It can be from some infernal force, but the fruit is not infernal at all, right? It is healing. It is life, love, light, help, right? All of that is positive. All of that is divinely inspired for the betterment of humankind, at least in my understanding. Some of the other magical aspects are not so, right? If you get a ritual of a particular type, that is going to protect you. I mean, it might not. It's entirely up to whatever source material you got that from. If it is aligned for the betterment of humankind, right, then the products from it are not going to be detrimental to anyone else. If it is not aligned for the betterment of humankind, then someone else is going to suffer in some way from the action. Now, that can be you manifesting through this means something that deprives someone else of something so that you can have something. That is working from a negative mindset. That is working from an area of lack. You don't need someone else's stuff to manifest into your life the positive things. You just need to act in accordance with the will of God. Then you get all of the things. Divinely inspired revelation to me is absolutely a thing. It is not God, but it is inspired by God, and therefore it is definitely in the realm of positive. All right, let's see what the next chapter holds. Chapter 12. How is it that particular virtues are infused into particular individuals, even of the same species? Oh, this is going to be a fun one. If you are unaware, I have spent an awful lot of time dealing with motivations. I have spent an awful lot of time dealing with how people think. I locked myself into a dark room with a chalkboard and spent hundreds of hours going through the archetypes, going through the psyches, separating a whole lot of things. And I've got a playlist. And of course I do. I have playlists for everything that I do. I have a playlist called Infinite Integrations, which I teach people to do magic, and that part, the psyche, the working out the shadow aspects, the diving into what is holding you back on a personal level, all of that is explained there. The steps practically that you in particular can take for your particular limitations is outlined there. I spend an awful lot of time on these particular subjects, and so I will probably have a little something to interject on this one. I also have a separate playlist called just the MBTI parts, where I separate out the magical parts so that you can just work on the self-help part of the psyche stuff, because it is beneficial. Everybody that has actually done the work, right, understood the concepts, understood the stack, and started working it, have seen significant improvement. Every single person that has put it into effect has seen a positive effect. So, all right. There are also, in many individuals or particular things, peculiar gifts, as wonderful as in the species, and these also are from the figure and situation of celestial stars. Now, this, for me, is not, right? There's a lot of people who identify as a particular astrological sign. It is entirely possible that at the moment of conception, the magnetics of the existence play a part in how you are put together. It may even assign your virtues, but it is probably not going to be at the moment of your birth, but rather at the moment of your conception, because when those particular magnetic emanations are mingling, right, the egg and the sperm, those are both magnetic emanations. When they are mingling their electromagnetic energies and creating the new life, it may very well be affected by the sun, the moon, and all of the planets. That is a possibility. it is much less likely that it is at the moment of birth. And so for me, astrology, being based upon the moment of your birth, is probably wrong. I have done a deep dive in astrology. I find no reason to doubt that it is wrong. For every individual, when it begins to be under a determined horoscope and a celestial constellation contracts together with its essence a certain wonderful virtue, both of doing and suffering something that is remarkable, even besides that which it receives from its species. And this it doth partly by the influence of the heaven, and partly through the obedientleness of the matter of the things to be generated, to the soul of the world, which obedientleness, indeed, is such as that of our bodies to our souls. For we perceive that there is this in us, that, according to our conceptions of things, our bodies are moved, and that cheerfully, which means quickly, as when things are afraid of or fly from anything. So many times when the celestial souls conceive several things, then the matter is moved obediently to it. Also in nature there appear diverse prodigies by reason of the imagination of superior motions. So also they conceive and imagine diverse virtues, not only things natural, but also sometimes artificial. And this, especially, if the soul of the operator be inclined towards the same. Whence Avicenna saith that whatsoever things are done here must have been done before in the motions, the conceptions of the stars and orbs. That is not a necessary conclusion, right? It is understandable the logic that he took to make it, but that doesn't mean that it is a logical assumption. I think that is taking the analogy to the extreme degree, right? That this guy died because the sun moved in this particular way, or the moon moved in this particular way, or the retrograde of Mercury through Venus, or whatever it happens to be. And I know that's not astronomically correct, right? That doesn't mean anything. Like, this is an assumption that you are making based upon your already existing conclusions, right? This is retconning this fits because of this, right? This guy died, the sun was doing, or the moon was doing this, so obviously it's because the moon was doing this that this guy died. And that is not necessarily a correlation. It can be, but there has not nearly been enough scientific research in repeatable ways to say that with any authority whatsoever. And this is attributing the way that you think to the stars, and I am vehemently against that. So you are much more likely to fall into the patterns of your MBTI than you are to the patterns of the astrological signs. Sorry if that hurts your feelings, but I'm not really sorry. So, in things, various effects, inclinations, and dispositions are occasioned not only from the matter variously disposed, as many suppose, but from a various influence and diverse form, not truly with a special difference, but particular and proper. And the degrees of these are variously distributed by the first cause of all things, God himself, who, being unchangeable, distributes to everyone as he pleaseth, with whom, notwithstanding second causes, angelical and celestial, cooperate, disposing of the corporeal matter and other things that are committed to them. All virtues, therefore, are infused by God through the soul of the world, yet by a particular power of resemblances and intelligences overruling them, and concourse of the rays and aspects of the stars in a particular harmonious consent. Now, once again, I do not believe that the stars are making you act a certain way. It has been my experience that the only Leos who actually accord to what Leo is supposed to are the ones that identify that way, right? I am a Leo, that's why I'm an asshole. I am a Leo, that's why I am overbearing, right? They are claiming this to excuse a particular trait of themselves. The Leos who don't identify with that, you don't know who they are. They don't tell you about it. Right? There are plenty of Leos who are not prideful. There are plenty of Leos who are perfectly humble. That is a thing. It is not because of how the stars were aligned at the moment of your birth. That doesn't determine your disposition. And like I said, it is entirely possible that there is something there, but it's more likely going to be a conception and gestation. More conception than gestation, but during the gestation process, you're getting new things added, right? You start off with an asshole, and then you wind up with a mouth, and you get a heart in the middle, right? All of that is changing as you grow, so it can be affected. But once you are fully formed and you're coming out of the chute, there's not a whole lot left to be said. And I believe that that holds for the MBTI process as well. I believe that by the time you're 8 years old, you can determine what somebody's type is going to be. You know what they are focusing on, right? If you got a 6-year-old and they're die hard into dinosaurs, then you know that they're dealing with this, right? That is definitely these things that have happened, very physical things. And there are all kinds of ways that you can determine the interest in ideas in a way that is beneficial so that you can actually take positive steps to utilize that. Which, by the way, is the entire point of my MBTI system, is to identify both the things that you do not pay enough attention to and the things that you do pay attention to so that you can harmonize those to bring about your best timeline. That's quite literally what the book's about. That's what the Infinite Integration playlist is about. That's what the Esoterica playlist is about, helping you to find balance in your life. All right, I think we got time for one more chapter. So we're going to do chapter 13, whence all occult virtues of things proceed. Oh boy. All is a big word. It is well known to all that there is a certain virtue in the lodestone by which it attracts iron. That is called magnetism. Right? Let's see what the footnote is. All right. Attracts iron. Lodestone is naturally magnetic. Upon quitting the marbles to pass on to the other more remarkable stones, who can for a moment doubt that the magnet will be the first to suggest itself? For what, in fact, is there endowed with more marvelous properties than this? Or, in which of her departments has nature displayed a greater degree of waywardness? Nature has here endowed stone with both sense and hands. What is there more stubborn than hard iron? A lot. Nature has, in this instance, bestowed upon it both feet and intelligence. It allows itself, in fact, to be attracted by the magnet, and itself a metal which subdues all other elements. It precipitates itself towards the source of an influence, at once mysterious and unseen. The moment the metal comes near it, it springs towards the magnet, and, as it clasps it, it is held fast in the magnet's embrace. Pliny. Lucretius elaborates on the notion of the lodestone works by creating in a vacuum. In the first place, many atoms, or effluvia, must necessarily fly from off the stone, which, by their impact, disperse the air that is situated betwixt the stone and the iron. When this space is emptied and a large void is made betwixt them, atoms of the iron, immediately darting forward, rush in a body into the vacuum, and the whole iron ring of necessity follows, and passes onward with its whole body. For no substance coheres and combines more closely, having its primary elements intimately involved, than the cold and rough consistence of stout iron. On the Nature of Things by J.S. Watson. Alright, we are up here. Let's get back. Alright, iron. And that the diamond doth by its presence take away that virtue of the lodestone. What? Let's look at that footnote for sure. So great is the antipathy borne by this stone, diamond, to the magnet, that when placed near, it will not allow of its attracting iron. Or, if the magnet has already attracted the iron, it will seize the metal and drag it away from the other. Pliny. I have read, furthermore, of this stone, lodestone, that if you lay but a diamond near it, it will not draw iron at all, but it puts from it as soon as ever the diamond comes in to touch it. Augustine, City of God. The same power was ascribed to, of all things, garlic. Nor will the lodestone attract the iron if it is rubbed with garlic. Translation F.E. Robbins. All this lore is also to be found in the Moralia of Plutarch. Needless to say, neither diamond nor garlic has the least effect on the lodestone. I was about to add that. I'm glad that he did. Right, I was about to say, right, I have not done the experiment, but I can do the experiment with both of those things, and I could probably tell you ahead of time that it does not take away the virtue of the lodestone. Back to the text. So also, amber and jet. Now, amber is going to be a resin that is produced from a plant, and jet is probably something akin to an onyx, but we're going to look up both of these. Amber, a golden translucent fossil resin that burns with a pleasant odor, and sometimes contains insects. When rubbed, it attracts straw and other such bits through static electricity. Pliny gives all the Greek lore of amber, saying that it was variously believed to have been formed from tears shed by trees, or by birds, or from the urine of lynxes, that it flows from the earth, that it is solidified brine, that it is the dew of sunbeams, and that it exudes from warm mud, before he gave his own opinion. Amber is produced from a marrow discharged by trees belonging to the pine genus, like gum from the cherry, and resin from the ordinary pine. It is a liquid at first which issues forth in considerable quantities and is gradually hardened by heat to cold, or else by the action of the sea, when the rise of the tide carries off the fragments from the shores of these islands, in the northern ocean. At all events, it is thrown up upon the coast in so light and voluble a form that in the shallows it has all the appearance of hanging, suspended in the water. Pliny. Jet, also called gagates, a hard black form of coal, capable of accepting a high polish. I guess that's agates, right? It was called black amber and is often confused with amber. It is double colored, black and the color of saffron, which is a deep, deep orange. Book of Secrets. Because it shares with amber the power of attracting bits of straw when rubbed, a property mentioned by Albertus Magnus, Pliny says, "It is black, smooth, light, and porous, differs but little from wood in appearance. It is of a brittle texture and emits a disagreeable odor when rubbed." Oh, that's fart stone. I don't know about your school experience, but when I was a kid, all of the insulation that we had, right, they'd gotten rid of asbestos and they came in with this stone. It was a hard, porous black stone, and if you took it and crushed it, it stinks. It smells like asshole, right? I shouldn't say that, but that's what it smells like. It is a very, very nasty smell. And we used to play pranks on each other with it. We would put it in the chair and somebody would sit in it and it would crush. It sounded like a fart, and then there would be a smell. It was a whole thing we did in middle school, or elementary school, not even middle school. So that's what they're talking about. I got you. I don't know what the real name of it is. If you know what the real name of it is, drop it down below. Marks made upon pottery with this stone cannot be effaced. When burnt, it gives out a sulphurous smell. It is a singular fact that the application of water ignites it, while that of oil quenches it. Well, that would not be the same thing. The fumes of it, burnt, keep serpents at a distance. That is highly unlikely. And dispel hysterical affections. Again, highly unlikely. And they detect a tendency, also, to epilepsy. The stone detects a tendency to epilepsy? That's interesting. And act as a test for virginity. Okay. A decoction of this stone in wine is curative of toothache, and in combination with wax, it is good for scrofula. The magicians, it is said, make use of gagates in the practice of what they call axinomancy, divination by placing jet on the red-hot blade of an axe. And they assure us that it will be sure not to burn if the thing is about to happen as the party desires. That is not arbitrary at all. Alright, where are we at? So also, amber and jet rubbed and warmed draw straw to them, and the stone asbestos, being once fired, is never, or scarce, extinguished. And again, we talked about that before. You can use asbestos as a wick, but it does not burn on its own. We will check out the footnote for 5, though. Scarce extinguished. If thou wilt make a fire continually unable to be quenched or put out, take the stone which is called asbestos, and it is of the color of iron, and there is found very much of it in Arabia. If the stone be kindled or inflamed, it may never be put out or quenched, because it hath the nature of the first feathers of the salamander, by reason of moisty fatness, which nourisheth the fire kindled in it. Book of Secrets. Albertus Magnus calls asbestos salamander's down. All right, where are we at? Right there. A carbuncle shines in the dark. Let's go check out that footnote. That is number 6. All right, in the dark, the carbuncles of the ancient world were generally rubies and red garnets. Speaking of these fiery red gemstones, Pliny says, in the first rank among these brilliant stones is carbunculus. It is called from its resemblance to fire, though in reality it is proof against the action of that element. Hence it is that some persons call these stones accustois, incombustible. In addition to this, each kind is subdivided into the male carbuncle and the female, the former of which is a more striking brilliancy and brightness, of the latter being not so strong. In the male varieties too we see some in which the fire is clearer than in others, while some again are of darker hue, or else have their brilliancy more deeply seated, and shine with a more brilliant, more powerful luster than others when viewed in the sun. It is important to note that brilliancy is clarity. It is not glowing, right? It is the ability to see into it. According to Calliastris, the refulgence of this stone would be of the whitest hue, and when placed on a table, it should heighten by its luster other stones placed near it that are clouded at the edge. From these references to its brilliance, the carbuncle becomes, proverbially, as a light-emitting stone. It does not emit light. It refracts light. It can reflect light. It does not emit light. In the Book of Secrets, it can change the tone and the hue of a light, but it does not emit light on its own. In the Book of Secrets, directions are given for making an artificial carbuncle. If thou wilt make a carbuncle stone or a very thing shining in the night, take very many of the little beasts shining by night, glowworms and fireflies, and put them, beaten, small in a bottle of glass, and close it, and bury it in hot horse's dung, and let it tarry 15 days. Afterward thou shalt distill water of them per albaceum, which thou shalt put in a vessel or crystal or glass. It giveth so great clearness that every man may read and write in a dark place where he is. Marvels of the world. I have not done this experiment, but I would be willing to bet that that is not true. You can take the chemicals that are emitted by a firefly, and you can smush them and it will glow, but it is a limited thing. It will definitely wear itself out. Okay, carbuncle shines in the dark. The stone Aetes put above the young fruit of women or plants strengthens them, but being put under causeth abortion. Let's see what that is. The aelites, or eagle stone, is a hollow concretion containing crystals or pebbles or pellets of earth that rattle when the geode is shaken. Well, that is not going to cause an abortion. Pliny says that eagles build this stone into their nest. That is not true. The stone has the quality also, in a manner of being pregnant, for when shaken, another stone is heard to rattle within, just as though it were enclosed in its womb. It has no medical properties, however, except immediately after it has been taken from the nest. Pliny. Elsewhere he says, attached to pregnant women or to cattle in the skins of animals that have been sacrificed, these stones act as a preventative of abortion, care being taken not to remove them till the moment of paritition, for otherwise prosidence of the uterus is the result. If, on the other hand, they are not removed at the moment when paritition is about to ensue, the operation of nature cannot be effected. Pliny. The Book of Secrets says of the Aeites, it is profitable to women great with child, it letteth, stops, untimely birth. This is drawn from Albertus Magnus, who says of this stone that it mitigates the perils of childbirth. Lucan refers to the stones that resound, explode, beneath the brooding bird. Perhaps when cast into the fire, air and moisture in the hollow caused it to crack open, a kind of hatching or birth. And it is not going to cause you to abort your child if you sit it the wrong way. Well, I mean, if you sit in the wrong way, with it in your stomach, maybe. The jasper stauncheth blood. The little fish echinesis stops of ships. We'll go ahead and check out 8 and 9 while we're down here. Alright, 8. Stauncheth blood. Jasper is an opaque quartz that may be red, yellow, brown, or green. When red flakes of iron oxide occur in green jasper, it is called bloodstone. It should not be confused with heliotrope, which is translucent green chalcedony with crimson spots. It is easy to distinguish between them because jasper is always completely opaque. In ancient times, the two stones were confounded together. In ancient Egypt, red jasper was associated with the menstrual blood of Isis, which was supposed to increase the milk in women who were suckling children, and to help pregnant women budge. According to medieval legend, bloodstone was created at the crucifixion of Christ, when spatterings from his side, where he was pierced by the spear of the Roman soldier, fell upon the ground, and never mind that they had it prior to that. From this time onwards, the stone seems to have been endowed with magical and divine powers in arresting hemorrhage from wounds, and was worn by Roman soldiers for this reason. Among the natives of India, it is customary to place the bloodstone itself upon the wounds and injuries after dipping it in cold water. And Echinesis just says see note 5. So, next up. Where are we at? We are right here. Rhubarb expels choler. The liver of the chameleon, burnt, raises showers and thunders. We'll go ahead and check out 10 and 11, then we'll do 12 and 13. There's a lot of footnotes in this one. Alright, 10 and 11. So 10 is expels choler. The dried root of the genus Rheum was extensively used in medicine in the time of Agrippa. The best variety being imported overland from Tibet and China, it was called Turkey rhubarb, Gerard says. The purgation which is made with rhubarb is profitable and fit for all, as such be troubled with choler. Adding, it purgeth forth cholericky and naughty humours. John Gerard, the Herbal. 11. Chameleon, burnt. The chameleon was the magical beast of the air, as the salamander was of the fire, because it was supposed to live on air. It always holds its head upright and its mouth open, and is the only animal which receives nourishment neither by meat nor drink, nor anything else but from the air alone. Again, that is not true. Pliny. Democritus asserts that if the head and neck of a chameleon are burnt in a fire made with logs of oak, it will be productive of a storm attended with rain and thunder, a result equally produced by burning the liver upon the tiles of a house. Alright, that was 10 and 11, so let's see what else we got. There's a lot more to come. So, chameleon, burnt, raises showers and thunders. The stone, heliotropium, dazzles the sight and makes him that wears it to be invisible. The stone, lincurious, takes away delusions from before the eyes. Alright, 12 and 13 is going to be heliotropium. See note 8 above. Heliotropium is found in Ethiopia, Africa, and Cyprus. It is of a leek green color, streaked with blood red veins. It has been thus named from the circumstance that, if placed in a vessel of water and exposed to the full light of the sun, it changes to a reflected color like that of blood. This being the case with the stone of Ethiopia more particularly. Out of the water, too, it reflects the figure of the sun like a mirror, and it discovers eclipses of that luminary by showing the moon passing over the disk. In the use of this stone also, we have a most glaring illustration of the impudent effrontery of the adepts in magic, for they say that, if it is combined with the plant heliotropium, and certain incantations are then repeated over it, it will render the person invisible who carries it about him. And again, I don't have any experimental advice to add to that other than it's probably incorrect. Lincurius, or lynx water, a stone thought to be formed from the urine of lynxes mixed with a particular kind of earth. They have said, too, that it is a product of the urine of the lynx and of a kind of earth, the animal covering up the urine the moment it avoided it, from a jealousy that man should gain possession of it, a combination which hardens into stone. The color of it, they inform us, like that of some kind of amber, is of a fiery hue, and it admits, they say, of being engraved. They have said, too, that this substance attracts to itself not only leaves or straws, but thin plates of copper, even, or of iron. The story which Theophrastus even believes on the faith of a certain Diocles. For my own part, I look upon the whole of these statements as untrue, and I do not believe that in our time there has ever been a precious stone seen with such a name as this. I regard, too, the assertions that have been made as to its medicinal properties as equally false, to the effect that, taken in drink, it disperses urinary calculi, and that taken in wine, or only looked at, is a curative of jaundice. Pliny, Book of Secrets, citing Isidore of Seville, says that it is a stone taken from the head of a lynx, of a white color. Also, it taketh away a white spot of pearl, cataract, in the eye. Book of Secrets. It has been conjectured that lincurium is brown tourmaline, which has electrical properties similar to those described. Magnetizing copper would be absolutely interesting to me. So, alright. Takes away delusions. The perfume of the stone Leparius calls forth all the beasts. The stone Synechitis brings up infernal ghosts, and the stone Anarchitis makes the images of the gods appear. The Anectus, put under that of the dream, causeth oracles. Alright, we'll look up 14, 15, and 16 while we are here. Liparia. All that we find said about Liparia, fat stone, is that employed in the form of fumigation it allures all kinds of wild beasts. Pliny. This stone is found in Libya, and all beasts run to it, as to their defender. It letteth neither dogs nor hunters may hurt them. Book of Secrets. This is conjectured to be sulfur from the Lipari Islands, a group of volcanic islands north of Sicily. 15. Synochitis. Anicetus, stone of necessity, is used in hydromancy, they say, for summoning the gods to make their appearance, and Synochitis, retaining stone, for detaining the shades from below when they have appeared. Pliny. The stones are mentioned by St. Isidore, Bishop of Seville, in his Etymology. See Evans. And 16 just says see above. Alright, so let's get back up here. I know I'm doing a lot of scrolling today, but I don't like the way they did their footnotes. There is an herb in Ethiopia with which they report ponds and lakes are dried up and all things that are shut to be opened. And we read of an herb called lactase, which the Persian kings give to their ambassadors, that whithersoever they shall come, they shall abound with plenty of all things. There is also a Scythian herb, which, being tasted or at least in the mouth, they report the Scythians will endure 12 days' hunger and thirst. And Apuleius said that he was taught by an oracle that there were many kinds of herbs and stones, with which men might prolong their lives forever, but that it was not lawful for men to understand the knowledge of these things, because, whereas they have but a short time to live, they study mischief with all their might, and attempt all manner of wickedness. If they should be sure of a very long time, they would not spare the gods themselves. But from whence these virtues are, none of all of these have showed, who have set forth huge volumes on the properties of things. Not Hermes, not Bocchus, not Aaron, not Orpheus, not Theophrastus, not Thebeth, not Xenothemis, not Zoroaster, not Evix, not Dioscorides, not Isaac the Jew, not Zacharias the Babylonian, not Albertus, not Arnoldus. And yet, all of these have confessed the same, that Zacharias wrote to Mithridates, the great power and human destinies are couched in the virtues of stones and herbs. But to know from whence these come, a higher speculation is required. Alexander, the peripatetic, was not going any further than his senses and qualities is of the opinion that these proceed from elements and their qualities, which haply might be supposed to be true, if those were of the same species. But many of the operations of the stones agree with neither in genre nor species. Therefore, Plato and his scholars attribute these virtues to ideas, the formers of things. But Avenson reduceth these kinds of operations to intelligences. Hermes to the stars, Albertus to the specific forms of things. And, although these authors seem to thwart one the other, yet none of them, if they be rightly understood, goes beside the truth, since all their sayings are the same in effect and in most things. For God, in the first place, is the end and beginning of all virtues. He gives the seal of the idea to his servants, the intelligences, who, as faithful officers, sign all things entrusted to them with an ideal virtue, the heavens, the stars, and instruments, disposing the matter in the meanwhile for the receiving of these forms which reside in the divine majesty, as saith Plato in Timaeus, which we have read, and to be conveyed by stars. And the giver of forms distributes them by the ministry of his intelligences, which he hath set as rulers and controllers over his works, to whom such a power is entrusted in things committed to them, that so all virtue of stones, herbs, metals, and all other things may come from intelligences, the governors. The form, therefore, and virtue of things come first from the ideas, then from the ruling and governing intelligence, and then from the aspects of heavens disposing, and lastly from the tempers of the elements disposed, answering the influences of the heavens by which the elements themselves are ordered or disposed. These kinds of operations, therefore, are performed in these inferior things by express forms, and in the heavens by disposing virtues, in intelligences by mediating rules, in the original cause by ideas, and exemplary forms, all which must of necessity agree in the execution of the effect and virtue of everything. There is therefore a wonderful virtue in operation in every herb and stone, but greater in a star, beyond which, even from the governing intelligences, everything receiveth, and obtains many things for itself, especially from the supreme cause, with whom all things do mutually and exactly correspond, agreeing in an harmonious consent, as it were in hymns, always praising the highest maker of all things, as by the three children in the fiery furnace, were all things called upon to praise God with singings. It was full-grown men in the furnace. Bless ye, Lord, all things that grow upon the earth, and all things which move in the waters, all fowls of the heavens, beasts, and cattle, together with the sons of men. There is therefore no other cause of the necessity of effects than the connection of all things with the first cause, and their correspondency with these divine patterns and eternal ideas, whence everything hath its determinate and particular place in the exemplary world, and from whence it lives and receives its original being. And every virtue of herbs, stones, metals, animals, words, and speeches, and all things that are of God, is placed there. Now, the first cause, which is God, although he do by the intelligences, and the heavens work upon these inferior things, doth sometimes, these mediums being laid aside or their officiating being suspended, work these things immediately by himself, which works then are called miracles. But whereas secondary causes, which Plato and others call handmaids, do, by the command and appointment of the first cause, necessarily act and are necessitated to produce their effects, if God shall notwithstanding, according to his pleasure, so discharge and suspend them, that they shall wholly desist from the necessity of that command and appointment, then they are called the greatest miracles of God. So the fire in the Chaldeans' furnace did not burn the children. So also the sun at the command of Yeshua went back from its course the space of one whole day. So also at the prayer of Hezekiah, it went back 10 degrees or hours. See the 12,000 year disaster cycle. So, when Christ was crucified, the sun was darkened. There is no record of that happening outside of the New Testament, though at full moon. And the reason of these operations can by no rational discourse, no magic or occult, or profound science whatsoever be found out or understood, but are to be learned and inquired into by divine oracles only. And that is going to bring us to the end of this particular exploration. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to some somewhat difficult topics. I understand I hold some unconventional beliefs and I have a tendency to step on toes when I relay those. It is not intentional, but it is not something I apologize for. I didn't have a whole lot to add to this, right? The parts that I did correct were just suppositions for the most part, right? It is easy to suppose that these things are not true since they probably can be borne out by evidence to not be true. But other than that, like, these rely a great deal upon experimentation before you can dismiss them, right? I did the astrology video because I didn't want to dismiss astrology until I had looked into it. The same with the tarot videos. Many of the things in alchemy are going to prove to be untrue. But until you experiment with them, you can't say that they're untrue out of hand. It is entirely possible that things are possible. And so we have to experiment or speculate. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, a share, or follow. Throw me a comment if you agree or disagree with anything that was said. Put it in the box down below. And if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If there is another work you would like to see me read or discuss in the manner that we are doing here, drop that in the box as well. And if you really like what I'm doing, hit me with that super thanks. Consider joining for a membership or picking up a copy of my book where I teach you to do magic responsibly. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt State. Peace.